Commander Zara Kelleth stood in the control room of the Federation's main base on Kelrose Prime. Her tall, thin body glowed with soft blue light that grew darker with each passing minute. The light was how her people showed their feelings. Right now it showed fear on the huge screen in front of her. She watched as the enemy ships destroyed another one of their colonies. The Vorak warships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They were alive, grown instead of built. Their weapons shot beams of light that tore apart everything they touched. How many people lived on Station 7? Zara asked her assistant. 2 million, came the quiet answer. All gone now. Zara's skin turned even darker blue. Her people, the Canny, had never faced anything like this. For thousands of years they had lived in peace. They were good at science and building things, but they had never needed to fight anyone. When they had problems with other species, they talked things out. Their minds could feel what others were feeling, which made it easy to understand each other. But the Vorak were different. They could not be reasoned with. Their minds were protected by machines in their heads. They could not feel what others felt. All they wanted was to conquer and destroy. Sir, we are getting reports from the outer planets, said Lieutenant Ben Torres, a young Connie whose skin was flashing red and white with panic. Vorak are not just destroying our colonies, they are taking prisoners. Taking them where? Zara asked, though she was afraid of the answer. To their ships, sir. Our scouts say the Vorak ships are alive. They think the prisoners are being used to feed the ship somehow. Zara felt sick. She had heard stories about the Vorak from other species that had tried to fight them. The enemy did not just kill their victims, they used them as fuel for their living ships. The thoughts and pain of the prisoners powered the Vorak weapons. What about our defenses? She asked. Captain Alex Reed, the head of what little military the Kalani had, shook his head. Our defense platforms are not working, sir. The Vorak weapons eat through our shields like they are not even there. Our ships are built for exploring space, not fighting. We lost 12 vessels in the first hour. Zara looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed where Vorak ships were moving through their space. There were hundreds of them, all heading toward the core worlds where billions of Kalani lived. Her people had no way to stop them. How long until they reach Kel's Prime? She asked. At their current speed, maybe 6 days, Captain Reed said. His skin was pure white with terror. 6 days, 6 days. Until the enemy reached their home world. 6 days until everyone she had ever known would be dead or worse, sir, said Lieutenant Torres, his voice shaking. There is something else. The Vorak leader, Grand Admiral Vorax, has sent us a message. Show me. The main screen changed to show a creature that looked like a nightmare. Vorax was huge, maybe 10 feet tall. Half of his body was covered in metal and wires. His face was a mix of flesh and machine parts. When he spoke, his voice sounded like metal scraping against metal. People of the Kalani Federation, the creature said. I am Grand Admiral Vorax of the Vorak Dominion. For 500 years I have conquered worlds across this galaxy. Your resistance is pointless. Your weapons cannot hurt us. Your diplomacy means nothing to us. Surrender now and some of you may live as our slaves. Fight us and we will use your suffering to power our ships for the next 1,000 years. The message ended. The control room was silent except for the sound of computers beeping out bad news from across their territory. Options, Zara said, trying to keep her voice steady. We could try to evacuate the core worlds, Captain Reed suggested. Get as many people as possible onto transport ships and send them to the outer rim. The Vorex ships are faster than ours. Lieutenant Torres pointed out. They would catch the transports and kill everyone anyway. What about asking for help from other species? Someone else suggested. Sarah shook her head. The Centauri Republic is too far away. The Alaran Empire has their own problems with raiders in their space. Everyone else is either too weak to help or too scared of the Vorak to try. She walked to the big window that looked out over the capital city. Millions of Kalani went about their daily lives down there, not knowing that death was coming for them. The city was beautiful with tall towers that glowed with gentle light and gardens that floated in the air. It was everything the Kalani had worked for over thousands of years. In less than a week it would all be gone. There has to be something we can do, she said. Quietly, Captain Reed came to stand beside her. Sir, there is one option we have not talked about. What? The long-range communication array. We could send out a message to the entire galaxy. Ask for help from anyone who might be listening. Zara thought about it. The array was their most powerful communication system. It could send messages to every star system within 1,000 light years. But what good would it do? Who would be willing to fight the Vorak to save a species they had never heard of? It would be a waste of power. Lieutenant Torres said. No one will come, even if they wanted to help. The Vork would be here before any rescue fleet could arrive. Maybe, Captain Reed said. But what if we are wrong? What if there is someone out there who can help us, someone we do not know about? Zara looked back at the tactical display. More red dots had appeared. The Vorak fleet was growing larger as more ships arrived from other parts of their empire. Soon there would be over 1,000 enemy vessels in their space. Even if someone heard us and wanted to help, what could they do against a fleet that size? She asked. I do not know, sir, Captain Reed admitted, but right now hoping for a miracle is all we have left. Zara closed her eyes and tried to think. Her skin was now so dark blue it was almost black. She was the leader of her people. It was her job to protect them, but how could she protect them from something that could not be stopped? Prepare the message, she said finally. Sir, you heard me. Prepare the message. Send it on every frequency we have. Tell the galaxy what is happening here. Lieutenant Torres moved to his station and began working. What should the message say, sir? Zara thought for a moment. What words could possibly make someone care about the fate of strangers? What could she say that would make another species risk their own lives for people they had never met? Tell them we are a peaceful people who have never hurt anyone, she said slowly. Tell them we are being destroyed by an enemy we cannot fight. Tell them. She paused, searching for the right words. Tell them we cry out for angels, for saviors, for anyone who might have mercy on us. Tell them that if there is any light left in this dark universe, we need it now. Torres typed the message and looked back at her. Ready to send, sir. Send it, Zara ordered. Send it to every star system in range. Maybe somewhere out there someone will hear us, someone will care. The message went out across the galaxy, traveling at the speed of light toward distant worlds. Most places that received it, ignored it, or deleted it. Others were too far away to help. Some tried to send aid but knew they could never arrive in time, but in one small corner of space on a planet covered mostly by water, the message was received by the Deep Space Monitoring Station of the Earth Defense Force. Colonel Jake Morrison read the translation and felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had seen what happened when peaceful species met predators in space. It never ended well. But humans were different from most species in the galaxy. They had not evolved from peaceful creatures. They came from hunters, from predators who had climbed to the top of their world's food chain by being smarter and more ruthless than anything else, and in their 50 years of space travel they had learned one important lesson: sometimes the only way to protect sheep from wolves was to send bigger wolves. Morrison reached for his communication device. It was time to call Captain Hayes and her crew. The colony had asked for angels, but what they were going to get was something much more dangerous. They were going to get humanity. 3 days had passed since Commander Zerlith sent the message asking for help. 3 days of watching the Vorak fleet get closer to their home worlds. 3 days of losing more colonies and more lives. The colony had almost given up hope when something appeared on their sensors. Commander Lieutenant Torres called out, his skin flashing yellow with surprise. "We have a ship coming out of hyperspace." Near the edge of the system, Zara rushed to look at the readings. "Is it one of ours?" "No, sir. The design is completely unknown. It is much smaller than our ships, but the energy readings are strange, very strange." On the main screen they could see the new ship. It was long and black, shaped like a knife blade. Unlike the smooth, glowing ships the Kalani built, this one looked dangerous. Its hull seemed to drink up light instead of reflecting it. There were no bright colors or decorations. It looked like it was built for only one thing. "War, Sir Torres," said his voice shaking a little. "The ship is trying to contact us. Put them through." The screen changed to show the inside of the alien ship. Zara had to stop herself from stepping backward. Being looking at her was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was shorter than a Kalani, with pale skin and strange hair that covered only the top of its head. But it was the eyes that made Zara afraid. They were cold and hard like chips of ice. This was a predator looking at her. "This is Captain Lisa Hayes of the Earth Defense Force ship UES Reaper," the creature said. Its voice was rough, like someone who had spent years shouting orders. "We received your message asking for help. You came," Zara managed to say. "We did not think anyone would come." Captain Hayes looked at something off-screen, then back at Zara. "We are here, but before we talk about helping you need to understand what you are asking for. We are not like you. We are not peaceful. We are soldiers, and war is what we do best. We do not understand," Zara said. "You are here to help us, are you not?" "Maybe, but if you want us to save your people, you have to accept that we will do it our way, and our way is not pretty. We do not follow the same rules other species follow when they fight." Zara felt her skin turning darker blue. There was something about this human that scared her, but the Vorak were only 3 days away. "What do you want in return for your help right now?" "Nothing. We will talk about payment later. First, show us everything you know about these Vorak, their ships, their weapons, their tactics. Everything." For the next 2 hours, Zara and her staff shared all their information about the enemy, Captain. Hayes listened without saying much, but Zara could see her eyes getting colder and harder as she learned about the Vorak and what they did to their prisoners. Living ships, Hayes said finally, powered by the pain and fear of their victims that is sick even by our standards. Can you help us? Zara asked. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Your people ever heard of Earth? No good. That means the Vorak have not heard of us either. That gives us an advantage. Hayes leaned forward. Here is what we are going to do. We cannot fight their entire fleet head-on. We do not have enough ships for that, but we do not plan to fight fair. What do you mean? We are going to kill their fleet from the inside. My ship carries weapons that your people probably think are too terrible to use, weapons that turn living tissue against itself. We are going to infect their ships with something that will destroy them from within. Zara felt sick. That sounds horrible. It is horrible, but so is what they do to their prisoners. Sometimes you have to become a monster to fight monsters. Hayes looked directly at Zara. If that bothers you, we can leave right now, but if we leave, your people die. All of them. Zara closed her eyes. Everything about these humans felt wrong. They were violent and cold and seemed to enjoy the idea of causing pain, but they were the only hope her people had. What do you need from us? She asked. Stay out of our way. Do not try to contact us while we work. Do not ask questions about how we do things. And when this is over, forget you ever met us. Before Zara could answer, alarms began going off all over the control room. Commander, Captain Reed called out, the Vorak fleet is moving faster than we thought. They will be here in 2 days, not 3. Hayes nodded as if she had expected this. Then we start now. Captain, we need coordinates for their flagship, the biggest ship in their fleet. Here, Reed said, sending the information to the human ship, but you cannot get close to it. They have scouts everywhere. Let us worry about that. Hayes started to end the communication, then stopped. One more thing. When we start our attack, some of your people might try to help us. Do not let them. Anyone who gets in our way will be treated as an enemy. The screen went dark. Zara stared at it for a long moment. Sir Lieutenant Torres said quietly, are we doing the right thing? These humans seem almost as dangerous as the Vorak. I do not know, Zara admitted, but they are our only chance. Meanwhile, on the UES Reaper, Captain Hayes walked through the corridors of her ship. Everything was clean and efficient, but there were no decorations or comfort items. This was a ship built for killing, and everyone on it knew it. She found Sergeant Dan Cooper in the weapons bay, checking their special equipment. Cooper was a big man with scars on his hands and a cold look in his eyes. He had been fighting in space for 10 years, and it showed. What do you think of our new friends? Hayes asked. The colony. They are sheep, Cooper said without looking up from his work. Nice sheep, but still sheep. They have no idea what it takes to survive in a galaxy full of wolves and the Vorak. Wolves, but the bad kind, the kind that kills for fun, not just to eat. Cooper held up a small device that looked harmless but contained enough destructive power to kill millions. Good thing we are not wolves. What are we then? Hayes asked. Cooper smiled, and it was not a nice smile. We are the things that hunt wolves. In another part of the ship, medic Maria Santos was Preparing her medical supplies, Santos had saved more lives than she could count, but she could also kill without making a sound. She was checking poison darts when technical specialist Ryan Blake found her. "You ready for this?" Blake asked. He was young and thin, not looking much like a soldier, but his job was to break into enemy computer systems and turn their own technology against them. "As ready as anyone can be for what we are about to do," Santos replied. The nanobots are ready once we get them into their ship systems. The Vorak fleet will tear itself apart." Blake looked troubled. "Sometimes I wonder if we are the good guys anymore. Does it matter?" Santos asked. "Those Connie out there are going to die if we do not do this. Their children are going to be fed to living ships. Sometimes being the bad guy is the only way to protect the innocent." Back on the bridge, Captain Hayes looked at the star map showing the Vorak fleet. Over 800 ships, all heading toward worlds full of peaceful people who had never hurt anyone. In a few hours, her small crew would try to destroy all of them using methods that would make most species sick to think about. "Captain," her communications officer said, "we are getting a message from the Vorak flagship. They want to talk to us." "Put it through." The screen showed Grand Admiral Vorax, the nightmare creature who led the Vorak fleet. When he saw Hayes, his metal face twisted into what might have been confusion. "You are not Connie," he said. "No, we are human. I have never heard of your species. You are small and weak looking. Why do you interfere in our conquest?" Hayes stared back at the creature without fear. "Because someone asked us to." Forthex laughed, a sound like metal being torn apart. "One small ship against my entire fleet. You will die quickly, little human. Maybe, but you will not live to see it." "Brave words. What makes you think you can succeed where others have failed?" Hayes smiled, and it was the same cold smile Cooper had worn earlier. "Because we do not fight like the others. We do not have honor or mercy or rules about what we can and cannot do in war. We have only one rule: win." The communication ended. Fork stared at the dark screen for a moment, feeling something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. There had been something in the human's eyes, something that reminded him of his own reflection. These were not the peaceful prey species he was used to conquering. These were predators, but he had 800 ships, and they had one. Numbers had to count for something. On the Reaper, Hayes turned to her crew. "You all know the plan. We go in quiet, plant the nanobots in their flagship, and get out before they know what hit them. Once the infection spreads through their bio network, their own ships will kill them. And if we get caught," Cooper asked, "then we make sure the mission succeeds anyway, even if we do not make it out alive." Hayes looked at each of her people. "The Kelani asked for angels to save them. They are going to be disappointed, but their children will still be alive, and sometimes that has to be enough." The UES Reaper turned toward the Vorak fleet and disappeared from all sensors. The hunt was about to begin. The UES Reaper moved through space like a shadow. Captain Hayes had ordered all systems to minimum power except for the stealth generator. The ship was now invisible to every sensor the Vorak had. To them, it looked like empty space was drifting toward their fleet. Sergeant Cooper, Medic Santos, and Tech Specialist Blake sat in the small shuttle bay, checking their equipment. One last time. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would hide inside the wreckage of a destroyed colony station and let the Vorak salvage ships bring them aboard the flagship. Once inside, they would plant the nanobots in the ship's central nervous system. Remember, Cooper said, looking at his teammates. These ships are alive. They can feel us moving around inside them. Blake, you need to keep the ship confused about where we are. Blake nodded and held up a small device. This will hack into their neural networks and create blind spots in their senses, but it only works for about 2 hours before they adapt to it. 2 hours to get in, plant the nanobots, and get out, Santos said. That is not much time. It is enough, Cooper replied. It has to be. Captain Hayes came into the shuttle bay. We are approaching the debris field. The Vorak salvage teams are already picking through the wreckage, looking for anything useful. Your shuttle is disguised to look like a piece of the destroyed station. Cooper stood up and checked his weapons one more time. He carried a rifle that fired explosive rounds and several grenades that could punch holes through thick metal. Santos had her medical supplies and a pistol that shot poison darts. Blake had only a small sidearm, but his real weapons were the computer devices he carried. What if we run into prisoners inside the ship? Santos asked. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Save as many as you can, but do not let them stop you from completing the mission. Millions of colony will die if we fail. The 3 humans climbed into their shuttle. It had been painted and damaged to look like a piece of destroyed space station. Unless someone looked very closely, it would pass for debris. Good hunting, Hayes said as the shuttle bay doors opened. The shuttle drifted out into space, spinning slowly like a real piece of wreckage. Cooper watched through a small hidden window as they approached the Vorak fleet. The enemy ships were even more horrible up close. They looked like giant insects crossed with sea creatures. Their hulls were dark red and black, and they seemed to pulse like living hearts. There, Blake whispered, pointing at one of the smaller ships. Salvage vessel, it is coming this way. The Vorak salvage ship was ugly and covered with mechanical arms for grabbing debris. It reached out and caught their shuttle along with several real pieces of wreckage. Cooper felt the shuttle shake as they were pulled into the alien ship's cargo bay. We are in, he said quietly into his radio. Hayes, do you copy? I copy. The flagship is 2 km from your position. You need to get from the salvage ship to the main vessel. Cooper looked out the window. Again, the cargo bay was full of twisted metal and broken pieces from destroyed Kelani ships. There were also things that made his stomach turn, body parts. Keeney, who had not died quickly when their ships were destroyed. Movement. Santos whispered. 3 Vorthak creatures entered the cargo bay. They were tall and thin with 4 arms each. Their skin looked like wet leather, and their faces had too many teeth. They began sorting through the debris, looking for anything valuable. One of them stopped near their shuttle and tilted its head like it was listening to something. Blake activated his hacking device. The Vorak creature shook its head and moved away, suddenly losing interest in their hiding spot. It worked, Blake said, but I can already feel the ship trying to adapt to my signal. They waited until the Vorak creatures left, then carefully climbed out of their shuttle. The cargo bay was dark and warm, and everything smelled like blood and fear. Cooper led the way to the exit, moving carefully to avoid making noise. The corridors of the salvage ship were even worse than the cargo bay. The walls were made of some kind of living tissue that pulsed with a slow heartbeat. Veins ran along the ceiling carrying a thick green liquid. The floor felt soft and wet under their boots. "This is disgusting," Santos whispered. "Stay focused," Cooper replied. "Blake, which way to the flagship?" Blake checked his scanner. "There is a docking tube connecting this ship to the main vessel. 50 m that way." They moved through the corridors, trying not to touch the walls. Every few minutes Blake had to adjust his hacking device. As the ship tried to detect them, the ship was learning, getting smarter about finding intruders. They reached the docking tube and found it guarded by 2 Vorthak soldiers. These were bigger than the workers they had seen earlier, with metal armor grafted onto their skin and weapons built into their arms. Cooper signaled for the others to wait, then moved forward silently. His training in the asteroid colonies had taught him how to kill without making noise. The first guard died before it knew Cooper was there. The second one started to turn, but Santos put a poison dart in its neck. "Guards down," Cooper said into his radio, moving to the flagship now. The docking tube was long and dark. As they walked through it, they could hear sounds from the flagship screaming. The sounds made Santos want to turn around and run, but she forced herself to keep moving. "Hayes," Cooper called quietly, "we are entering the flagship now." "Copy that. Remember, you need to find the central nervous system. It should be in the deepest part of the ship." The flagship was a nightmare made real. The corridors were wider than those in the salvage ship, but they were also more alive. The walls moved and breathed. Eyes embedded in the ceiling watched them pass. Mouths in the floor whispered things in languages Cooper did not understand. "The ship knows we are here," Blake said, working frantically with his device. "It is getting harder to hide us." They passed rooms that Cooper wished he could forget, chambers full of Kilani prisoners hooked up to machines that fed on their fear and pain, laboratories where Vorak scientists experimented on living beings, nurseries where baby Vorak were fed the flesh of their enemies. "How can anything be this evil?" Santos asked, her face pale with horror. "Because they choose to be," Cooper replied. "That is why we have to stop them." They went deeper into the ship, following Blake's scanner toward the central nervous system. The corridors got narrower and the walls got more alive. Soon they were walking through passages that looked more like the inside of a living creature than a spaceship. "There," Blake said, pointing ahead, "the neural center, but there are guards." Cooper looked around the corner and saw the heart of the Vorak flagship. It was a huge chamber filled with a massive brain-like structure. Cables and tubes connected it to thousands of pods that held prisoners from dozens of different species. Their minds were being used to power the ship and its weapons, but between them and the brain were 20 Vorak guards. These were not the workers or soldiers they had fought before. These were elite warriors, bigger and more dangerous than anything they had faced. 20 guards, Cooper told Hayes through his radio. "This is going to get loud. Do what you have to do. We are running out of time. The fleet is almost at the Kalani core worlds." Cooper looked at his teammates. "Blake, how long do you need to plant the nanobots?" 5 minutes if everything goes right. Maybe 10 if there are problems. Santos, how many guards can you take down with your darts before they know we are here? Maybe 3 or 4. After that they will be ready for us. Cooper checked his rifle and grenades. 20 guards against 3 humans. The odds were not good. But they had faced worse before. Remember why we are here, he said. Those Kilani out there are counting on us. Their children are counting on us. We do not get to fail. Santos took aim with her dart gun. Ready, Blake activated his strongest hacking signal, hoping to confuse the guards for a few precious seconds. Ready, Cooper raised his rifle. On my mark, 3, 2, 1, go. The battle for the heart of the Vorak fleet was about to begin. Santos fired her dart gun 3 times before the Vorak guards knew what was happening. 3 of the massive creatures fell to the ground, their bodies shutting down from the poison. But 17 guards were still alive, and now they were angry. Cooper's rifle roared as he fired explosive rounds into the group of guards. The bullets tore through their armor and sent pieces of the creatures flying across the chamber. But the Vorak were tough, and even badly wounded ones kept fighting. Blake, go! Cooper shouted as he threw a grenade into the middle of the guards. Get to the brain! Blake ran toward the massive neural structure while Cooper and Santos fought to keep the guards busy. Young tech specialist dodged between the fighting and reached the base of the brain. Up close, it was even more horrible than he had thought. The brain was covered in veins and tubes, and he could hear voices whispering inside it. The voices of thousands of prisoners whose minds had been stolen to power the ship. Blake pulled out the container of nanobots and looked for a way to inject them into the brain. He found a thick tube that seemed to carry information through the ship's nervous system. This would be perfect. Hurry up, Santos yelled as she shot another guard with a poison dart. More guards were coming into the chamber. Soon there would be too many to fight. Blake inserted the nanobots into the tube and activated them. The tiny machines began spreading through the ship's neural network, but it would take time for them to reach all the other ships in the fleet, time they might not have. Behind him, Cooper was fighting like a man who knew he was going to die. His rifle was empty, so he had switched to his pistol and knife. Vorak guard grabbed him with 2 of its forearms, but Cooper stabbed it in the throat and rolled away. Blake, Cooper shouted, how much longer? The nanobots are in, but I need to make sure they spread to the other ships. Give me 2 more minutes. Santos was down to her last poison darts. She had killed 6 guards, but more kept coming. One of them got close enough to slash her arm with its claws, leaving deep cuts that bled freely. We have company, she said, pointing at the chamber entrance. 20 more guards were rushing in, along with something much worse, a Vorak commander, bigger than the others and covered in metal armor. This one had been modified so much that it was more machine than living creature. Cooper looked at the new arrivals and knew they were in trouble. Hayes, he called into his radio, we are about to be overrun. How is the fleet looking, Captain? Hayes was watching the battle from the bridge of the Reaper. I can see the nanobots starting to work. Some of the smaller ships are having problems with their systems, but the flagship is still functioning normally. The infection needs more time to spread. Blake called out. He was working frantically with his computer, trying to speed up the process. I can boost the signal, but I need to stay connected to the system. The Vorak commander entered the chamber and looked around at the dead guards. When it saw the 3 Humans, it made a sound like metal. Grinding against metal, it was laughing. Small prey, it said in broken galactic. Standard language, you think you can. Heard us, we have conquered a 100 worlds. We have destroyed species older than yours. Cooper reloaded his pistol and aimed at the commander, maybe, but none of them were human. The commander moved faster than anything that big should have been able to move. It crossed the chamber in seconds and grabbed Cooper with one massive hand. Cooper emptied his pistol into the creature's face, but the bullets just bounced off its armor. Santos tried to help, but the other guards surrounded her. She fought with everything she had, using her medical knowledge to find weak spots in their bodies, but there were too many of them. Blake, she yelled, whatever you are doing, do it now. Blake was connected directly to the ship's brain through his computer. He could feel the nanobots spreading through the neural network. But it was not fast enough. He made a decision that would save millions of lives and cost him his own. I am going to overload the system, he said. It will speed up the infection, but I will not be able to disconnect in time. Blake. No, Santos shouted. Tell my family I did something that mattered, Blake said. Then he activated the overload. Power surged through the ship's neural network. The nanobots spread like wildfire, jumping from ship to ship through the biological connections that linked the entire fleet. But the overload also sent deadly energy back through Blake's computer. Blake screamed as electricity coursed through his body. His hair caught fire and his skin burned, but he held on to the connection until he was sure the infection had reached every ship in the fleet. The Vorak commander dropped Cooper and spun around as alarms began going off. All over the ship, the brain was flashing red and making sounds like a wounded animal. Something was very wrong. What have you done? Commander roared. Cooper got to his feet, blood running from his mouth. We gave your ships a virus. Your own biology is about to kill you. All around them the ship began to shake. The walls started changing color from red to sickly green. The veins in the ceiling began to burst, spraying the green liquid everywhere. The ship was turning against its masters on other ships. Throughout the fleet, the same thing was happening. Vorak crews watched in horror as their living vessels began to attack them. Weapon systems turned on their own ships. Life support failed in critical areas. The voices of enslaved prisoners freed by the nanobots began screaming for revenge through the ships. Communication systems. Grand Admiral Vorak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet tear itself apart. Ships that had served him for centuries were now trying to kill their own crews. His perfect biological network had become a weapon against him. Retreat, he ordered. All ships retreat immediately. But it was too late. The nanobots had spread too far. Ships that tried to jump to hyperspace found their navigation systems turning against them. Some ships collided with each other as their steering failed. Others simply exploded as their power systems overloaded. In the neural chamber, Cooper and Santos fought their way to Blake's body. Young man was dead, but he had succeeded. The infection was spreading faster than the Vorak could stop it. We need to get out of here, Santos said, checking Blake's pulse one more time. This ship is going to tear itself apart. Cooper nodded and picked up Blake's body. No one gets left behind. They fought their way through corridors that were now actively trying to kill The ship's immune system turned. Against the Vorak by the nanobots saw everyone as an enemy. Walls tried to crush them, floors opened up beneath their feet, ceiling panels shot spikes at them, but they had studied the ship's layout, and Cooper knew where the escape pods were located. They reached the pod bay just as the ship's main power core began to fail. Hayes, Cooper called into his radio, "We are at the escape pods. Blake is dead, but the mission is complete." "I see you," Captain Hayes replied. "Get out of there now. That ship is about to explode." Cooper and Santos climbed into an escape pod with Blake's body. As the pod launched away from the dying flagship, they could see the rest of the Vorak fleet in chaos. Ships were exploding or crashing into each other. The few vessels that were still functioning were trying to flee, but the nanobots were in their systems too. Grand Admiral Vorax appeared on the communication channels broadcasting to his remaining ships. "Unknown enemy vessel," he said, his voice filled with something Cooper had never heard from Avarak before. "Fear, you have won this battle, but this war is not over. The Dominion has fleets in 1,000 systems. We will remember what you have done here." Captain Hayes responded from the bridge of the Reaper. "Good, remember this. Humanity protects those who cannot protect themselves. Attack innocents again, and we will find you. And next time we will not be so merciful." The communication ended. Forthax stared at the screen, realizing that his species had made a terrible mistake. They had thought the humans were just another prey species, but these creatures were predators, and they fought without honor or mercy. They used weapons that turned life itself into a weapon. As his flagship died around him, Vorak sent out a message to every Vorak commander in the galaxy: avoid the species called humans. They are not prey, they are something worse than us. Cooper and Santos watched from their escape pod as the last of the Vorthak fleet fled into hyperspace. Less than 50 ships out of 800 had survived. The threat to the colony was over. "Think they will stay away?" Santos asked. Cooper looked at Blake's body, then at the burning wrecks floating in space. "For a while, but they will be back eventually. That is what predators do. Then we will be ready for them." "Yes, we will." The UES Reaper picked up their escape pod and they began the journey back to Kels Prime. The Kalani had asked for angels, but they had gotten something much more dangerous. They had gotten humanity's promise that no one would hurt them again, and humanity always kept its promises. 3 weeks had passed since the battle with the Vorthak fleet. Commander Zara Keleth stood in what used to be the flagship of Grand Admiral Vorax. The massive ship was now dead, floating in space like a giant corpse. Human salvage teams moved through its corridors, studying everything they found. Zara watched the humans work and felt afraid. They moved through the wreckage with cold efficiency, taking apart Vorak technology and learning how it worked. They were not celebrating their victory. They were preparing for the next war. "Commander," Lieutenant Torres said, approaching her with his skin flashing nervous colors, "Captain Hayes wants to speak with you in the conference room." Zara followed Torres through the corridors of the dead ship. The walls no longer pulsed with life. The veins that had carried green liquid were now dry and black. The ship that had once been a living nightmare was now just empty metal and flesh. In the conference room, Captain Hayes sat across from several Kelani leaders. She looked tired, older than she had 3 weeks ago. Losing Blake had affected her more than she showed. Commander Kelleth, Hayes said as Zara entered. Please sit, we need to talk. About what happens next. Zara sat down, her skin glowing pale blue with worry. What do you mean? The Vorak fleet is destroyed, but this is not over. We have been studying their records, their communications, their technology. They were part of something bigger. Hayes activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked dozens of star systems. The Vorak Dominion was just one member of what they called the Conquest Alliance. There are 12 other species like them, all working together to enslave or destroy peaceful civilizations. They share information, technology, and victims. Captain Reed leaned forward, his skin turning white with fear. How many ships do they have in total? Thousands, tens of thousands. They have been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. Hayes pointed to different areas of the map. The Skarn Empire here uses living weapons that eat entire planets. Nethys Collective over here turns entire populations into mindless slaves. Voidstalkers hunt civilizations for sport. Zara felt sick. All this time we thought the Vorak were the worst thing in the galaxy. They were just the beginning, Hayes said, and now that we have destroyed them, the others will know about us. They will want revenge. What do you want from us? Zara asked. Hayes was quiet for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. Nothing. You have already given us enough. We do not understand. You asked for help and we gave it. But the price of that help is higher than you know. By saving you, we have painted a target on our own backs. Every predator species in the galaxy will now see humanity as a threat. Lieutenant Torres spoke up. Then why did you help us? Sergeant Cooper, who had been standing quietly in the corner, answered, because it was the right thing to do. Someone has to stand between the wolves and the sheep. Medic Santos, her arm still bandaged from the battle, added, Blake died believing he was saving innocent lives. We are not going to let his sacrifice be meaningless. Hayes stood up and walked to the holographic display. We are going to establish a monitoring station in your system. Officially, it is to watch for any surviving Vorthach forces. Unofficially, we will be keeping an eye on you. You do not trust us? Zara asked. We do not trust anyone completely. That is how we have survived this long. But we will protect you as long as you remain what you are now. And what are we now? Innocent, peaceful, worth protecting. Hayes turned to face the colony leaders. But if you ever change, if you ever become the kind of species that preys on others, we will stop you just like we stopped the Vorak. The threat was clear, but Zara was not angry. She understood now that the humans saw themselves as guardians of the galaxy. They would protect the innocent and destroy the guilty. No matter what the cost. What will you do about the other members of the Conquest Alliance? Captain Reed asked. Hunt them down one by one, Cooper said simply. It will take years, maybe decades, but we will find them all. Is that not a job for the Galactic Council? Torres asked. Hayes laughed, but there was no humor in it. The Galactic Council, they have been talking about the Conquest Alliance for 500 years and have done nothing. They are too afraid to fight, too corrupt to care. Santos pulled up another display showing communication records. We found something interesting in the Vorak files. The Council knew about the Alliance all along. They have been paying protection money to keep the predators away from the core worlds. Zara felt her skin turn dark blue with anger. They let outer worlds like ours be destroyed to save themselves. Politicians are the same everywhere. Hey, said they will sacrifice anyone to save their own skins. So you will fight the Alliance alone? Zara asked. We have allies, a few species that are tired of being afraid. The Centauri Republic has agreed to share intelligence with us. The free colonies in the Outer Rim are providing supply bases. Hayes looked at the star map again. It will not be easy, but it is necessary. A young Kalani scientist named Joran entered the room. His skin was flashing with colors that showed excitement and fear. Excuse me, Captain Hayes, I have been studying your people's history, your wars with each other. I have a question. Ask it, Hayes said. You have fought many wars on your own world. You have killed millions of your own species. How do we know you will not one day turn on us? The room became very quiet. The other Connie looked embarrassed that Joran had asked such a direct question, but Hayes did not seem angry. You do not know, she said finally. Every species has a choice about what they become. The Vorak chose to be predators. We chose to be guardians, but you are right to be worried. Power corrupts, and we have more power than most. Cooper stepped forward. But here is what you can count on. As long as there are monsters out there hurting innocent people, we will be too busy fighting them to become monsters ourselves. And the day we do become the thing we fight. He paused. Well, hopefully someone will be strong enough to stop us. Hayes nodded. We are not perfect. We are violent, ruthless, and we do terrible things to our enemies, but we do them to protect people like you. That has to count for something. A new alarm sounded throughout the ship. Lieutenant Torres checked his communicator and looked up with surprise. Captain Hayes, we are receiving a distress signal from the Riel system. It is similar to the one we sent 3 weeks ago. Hayes looked at the message on her screen. Another peaceful species under attack. Another plea for help from people who had no way to defend themselves. How far, she asked. 2 days at maximum speed, Cooper said, already checking their supplies. And how many enemy ships? The message says over 300. It looks like the Scar Empire this time. Hayes looked at her small crew, then at the Kalani leaders. We have to go. You just fought one impossible battle, Zara said. Are you going to fight another one? Someone has to. Santos said. Those people out there are counting on someone to care enough to help them. Hayes stood up and headed for the door. Cooper, Santos, get the ship ready. We leave in 1 hour. As the humans prepared to leave, Joran approached Cooper. 1 more time. Your people saved us, but I have studied your history. You are as dangerous as the species you fight. How do we know you will not become what you destroyed? Cooper looked at the young scientist for a long moment. You do not, but here is what I can tell you. Every species has a choice. The Vorak chose to be predators. We chose to be guardians. As long as there are sheep in this galaxy, there will be wolves hunting them. And as long as there are wolves, someone has to hunt the wolves. And what hunts the wolf? Hunters, Joran asked. Cooper smiled, but it was not a happy smile. If we ever become the monsters, hopefully someone stronger than us will put us down. But until that day comes, we are all you have. An hour later, the UES Reaper jumped to hyperspace carrying its crew toward another desperate battle. Behind them they left a monitoring station that would watch over the colony and protect them from any future threats. In the depths of space, automated human systems detected more distress signals. From distant systems, the galaxy was full of predators, and humanity had appointed itself to hunt them down. They had cried out for angels, but the earth had sent demons who would tear apart the darkness itself to let the light survive. And across the galaxy, peaceful species would sleep a little safer, knowing that somewhere in the black between the stars, humanity was watching and waiting. The hunt would never end, but as long as there were innocents to protect, humanity would keep fighting, because someone had to be the monster that killed the other monsters, and humans were very good at being monsters when they needed to be.